Well, I think that we have to remember what the State of the Union address is really meant to be. It's really to connect with the American people, as well as to lay out an agenda to the Congress and to establish and announce his priorities and upcoming legislative package. What he wanted to do, and what every president needs to do, is to say, well, what have they done over the last year or 2 years that affects the everyday lives of Americans? Because a lot of the legislation that's passed, even on a bipartisan basis, may not be readily apparent because they don't take effect right away. And so the president, I think, clearly articulated the fact that, for instance, unemployment is now at the lowest since 1969. That all these investments are starting to take effect, like lower drug prices for seniors started January 1 of 2023, and that the Congress, on a bipartisan basis, passed legislation, massive investment in roads, which means lots of construction jobs, fixing our roads, our bridges, expanding transit, providing high-speed internet to every part of the country, as well as incentives to bring back manufacturing to America, advanced manufacturing, manufacturing of high-tech items, as well as solar panels. So I think what he did was try to inform the American people of the things that will affect them on a daily basis. And he's taking credit for it, but also acknowledging the work of the Congress. Well, I think he made it very clear that just a few members, and unfortunately some of them are in the leadership of the Republican Congress, want to sunset or end Social Security and Medicare. And then when he was heckled by some of the Republicans saying, you're a liar, then I thought he very adroitly turned it around, was quick on his feet to say, oh, good. So that means we're not going to have any legislation to decimate or end or cut back Social Security and Medicare. And so I think he turned that around very beautifully, very adroitly. And I think that showed a lot of step in him. He was quick on his feet. And I think he somewhat enjoyed that back and forth. And so I think that came across very well to the American people, that he was quick on his feet and that he would almost force the Republicans to say, okay, we have an agreement. There will be no cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Our pleasure. Well, first of all, I applaud what the administration did and how it handled. Let me start all over. I really applaud how the administration handled the crisis with the balloon coming over American sovereignty and American airspace over our territory. I mean, as a former governor, I would have been very concerned had they tried to shoot down that balloon over populated areas, because when you're talking about a balloon that's 200 feet high, with equipment the size of 3 school buses, weighing thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds, and not knowing exactly where it was going to land. I mean, when it did land, it was a debris field of 7 miles, but that very heavy equipment could have landed on a home, on a school, or a business, and could have injured or killed people. And I actually thought it was brilliant that they shot it down over shallow water so that they could actually retrieve it, instead of shooting it over land where it would fall and break into millions of pieces. And so kudos to the administration for how they handle it. As a governor, I think all the governors would have been concerned had they tried to shoot it down over any of their respective states. But while the states do have the primary responsibility for law enforcement and local governments, the federal government can set minimum standards, almost like quality standards and minimum procedures that must be followed to protect the rights of everyday citizens. And I thought it was notable that even the Republicans stood and applauded his call for meaningful police reform. Obviously, the president did a great job in acknowledging that police officers, when they put on that badge, are putting their lives on the line. And the vast, vast majority of police officers are highly ethical and highly trained and competent and want to do the right thing. And so I'm hoping that some sort of police reform will pass. It may not be the version that the president wants, and it could even be stuck onto another piece of legislation that is about to pass. And that's how a lot of the legislation is conducted in D.C. The actual original legislation isn't passed, but the guts, the essence of the proposal is attached to something else that is about to be voted on. I doubt it. In the U.S. Senate, except for rare occasions, you need 60 votes to even bring up something for debate, to even consider it. And there are not 60 votes, especially with the split Senate. And this is among Democrats and Republicans. It's not a highly partisan issue or strictly partisan issue. Most of the Republicans, of course, will oppose it. But you have a few Democrats who would also oppose the legislation. And without 60 votes, you're not going to get there. And it really starts also with the doctors not prescribing these opioids and these highly addictive drugs. The drug companies are now being held accountable. A lot of it action by the attorney generals across the United States suing these drug companies. And, so many of them were aware of what was happening, but they put profits ahead of people's lives. So as Rob indicated, it is a very wide ranging, very complex issue from smuggling fentanyl and opioids into the country, and people making it here in the United States, to overprescription by doctors of all kinds of painkillers. And then, of course, we know that it's really fueling a lot of the crime and the homelessness in our society. And this is an incredible tragedy that's going to require so many different organizations and minds and interest groups coming together to really tackle this. There's no one size fits all solution to this. No, I think, the president had to inform the American people of the impact on their daily lives of all the legislation that he and the Congress have been passing and have been working on, some of it on a bipartisan basis, some of it administrative. And that's the challenge, because as the New York Times poll indicates, people aren't sure what he has done. And that was his job today. And I think he did a fairly good job reminding the American people, informing them that so much of what has passed and has occurred in the last 2 years is now starting to take effect, and they're going to start seeing it. Road construction, repairs of bridges, expansion of transit systems, the fact that drug prices for seniors will be going down, and that the Medicare will be able to negotiate with the drug companies lower drug prices, and that seniors will not have to pay more than $2,000 a year on Medicare for their drugs, as well as reducing the price of insulin. That takes effect immediately.